Thank you everyone for joining today. And we'll just be waiting a few more moments and then getting started shortly. Hi everyone, thanks again for joining. We're just waiting for a few more moments and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right, thank you all so much for joining us today for tapping into the TiR Toolkit, an interactive training webcast. And my name is Kate Moran. I'm the engagement manager here at Water Now Alliance. And this webcast will provide you an introduction into the Tap into Resilience, which we often refer to as TiR. And today we'll cover an in-depth resources included in the TiR Toolkit, which is a portal into a wide range of resources and its powerful network of experts to help you start planning to get sustainable and resilient water solutions implemented in your own community. And before we get started here, let's just take a quick look at the agenda. So first, I will briefly just go over Water Now Alliance and Tap into Resilience with you. And then we'll be diving into the TiR Toolkit, and then we'll be hearing from our guest speakers, Ed Harrington and General Manager June Lopez. And then following the Toolkit interactive review, we'll have time for a Q&A session to ask up follow-up questions to all of our speakers. And so I'm also joined by my colleagues, Caroline Cook, Water Now's Water Policy Director here, and Tim Grant, our Communication and Outreach Manager, who will be handling questions in tech. We are also fortunate to have with us today Ed Harrington. So he is one of our TiR experts, who is the former president of the Government Finance Officers Association and retired general manager of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. We are also thrilled to have with us General Manager June Lopez for Molten Niguel Water District, and a retail water provider in Southern California that's raising the bar when it comes to water efficiency and innovation. And before we get started, I want to quickly review some of the functionality of this Zoom webcast with you. So you'll be able to submit questions throughout the entire webcast using the Q&A tool seen here with this red arrow. And simply just type your question into the pop-up box, like so. And we will either reply to you directly in the chat box, or it'll answer it live on the webcast during the Q&A session. And so we will also be doing some polling questions throughout the presentation. And so in a moment here, you'll see a poll pop up on your screen, and we'll just kind of test out this technology to get you guys warmed up. And so now you should see the question and answer. So is your community currently using localized distributed infrastructure solutions to address water supply, water quality, stormwater, or wastewater challenges? So go ahead and click your answer, and I'll give you here a few moments to vote. And so your options are yes, we've invested extensively into localized infrastructure programs. We have a few programs. No, we don't. We haven't invested in these programs, or I just don't know. So Tim is going to share the results with us here in a few moments. All right, so it looks like we have almost 50% of you saying we have a few programs, and then we have around 17% saying yes, we've invested, and then we have around 20 with we haven't invested in these programs, and then a couple here with I don't know yet. So thanks for taking that poll, and just so you know, we have a few more throughout the webcast just to kind of keep you guys entertained, and we do really appreciate you participating in those polls. For those of you not familiar with Water Now Alliance, we are a network of local water resource decision makers supporting sustainable, affordable, and climate resilient water strategies across the entire One Water spectrum. And we have a broad definition of water leaders, including mayors, city council members, county supervisors, general managers, public work directors, to water agency directors. All of those responsible for making decisions about water supply, wastewater, and stormwater management at the local and regional levels. And so why do we focus on local leaders? We focus on these decision makers because they represent 95% of all spending on infrastructure at the local level across the nation. So it really is the decisions made in these boardrooms, as you all know so well, that really informs the nation's water future. And sustainability, it's one of those terms that gets kicked around quite a bit. So let's just take a moment here to how we define it here at Water Now. So we define it as providing safe, healthy, and affordable water services for people while preserving the integrity of water resources and the environment for future generations. And this leads us at Water Now to advocate for 6 buckets of water strategies that are untapped and underutilized today. Together, they represent a critical part of the path forward. So these buckets include reuse and recycling, green infrastructure, source water and watershed protection, water trading and market mechanisms, groundwater management, and of course, water conservation and use efficiency. And Water Now has recently launched Tap into Resilience, created to support cities, towns, and water agencies in accelerating and also scaling up their investments in on-site, localized, and distributed systems of all kinds to supplement and also integrate with existing built water infrastructure. These options are today's untapped resources, the lower hanging fruit with significant potential to address drinking water, stormwater, wastewater, and other water management challenges we all face in our communities. And with that, decentralized, localized, and on-site systems and technologies are solutions that are distributed over many properties, both public and private. They do not have to be owned and operated by the city, utility, or water agency. And they serve the same function as conventional infrastructure and can operate in concert with existing infrastructure. And while in today's webcast, we will be honing in on how to use the TiR Toolkit to support water leaders like you to navigate finance, tax, accounting, legal, and other issues to consider as you plan distributed water solutions. Let's just take a quick moment to frame exactly what we mean by on-site, localized, and distributed water solutions. There is a wide range of options for you to consider. And I'll run through a handful of examples just to give you a sense of how truly broad tap into resilience strategies are. So that includes leak detection, green roofs, high efficiency appliances and fixtures, to smart irrigation controllers, blue roofs, bioswales, green streets, constructed wetlands. We have the porous pavement allowing water to soak in, rainwater capture, gray water reuse, to native landscaping and turf replacement, also to on-site non-potable reuse systems. So all of these strategies are just a handful of examples of the wide menu of options you have. And many of your cities and towns may already be using a variety of rebates and other incentive programs to encourage homeowners and businesses to be investing in these localized and on-site strategies. The question is, are these strategies infrastructure? And here we say yes. The point is, decentralized on-site systems can serve the same functions as traditional water infrastructure in that they support a reliable water supply, manage stormwater runoff, and provide water treatment. This represents the much needed long-term investments in our water system's functionality and also its resilience. And through expanding our menu of water infrastructure options, these alternatives are providing useful benefits to communities and ratepayers. The big picture benefits of localized infrastructure generally are it's less expensive and less time intensive to implement than building a centralized water infrastructure. It can restore and enhance watershed and ecosystem functions to support water supply resilience and also health, and also provides multiple benefits for the communities and ratepayers. And for us, Tap into Resilience really is all about changing the definition of utility investment. Water leaders are no longer limited to a single option of an expensive conventional infrastructure to address water resource challenges. Utilities can now invest in localized strategies and experience real beneficial results of this infrastructure. And while each configuration, it's gonna look different to ensure the best fit for your community, you have these options. And the growing number of agencies and cities are implementing localized on-site projects, but for the most part, these projects are small and not developed at a scale where significant water supply, stormwater, water quality advancements are being seen. And so with that, I'm going to be handing this over to Caroline Cook, WaterNow's Water Policy Director, who will walk us through the TiR Toolkit and how you can use this to support your community's water future. And then we'll be hearing first from Ed Harrington, following by General Manager June Lopez.
Thanks so much for that introduction to the Tap into Resilience initiative, Kate. As Kate mentioned, I'll be discussing a critical part of the campaign, the Tap into Resilience Toolkit, which, as Kate mentioned, is a portal to everything water managers need to scale decentralized water infrastructure all in one place. So that you can see how the toolkit works, we'll have a live walkthrough. But first, let's go over the information included in the toolkit to put this all into context before we dive in. The toolkit includes 6 main categories of information, which are online modules, success stories, downloads, videos, a resource library, and what we call the Ask an Expert feature. So I'll briefly cover each of these categories, but before we do, let's do a quick survey of the group. How familiar are you with the Tap into Resilience Toolkit? And don't worry, the answers are going to be anonymous, so you can be honest and say you haven't seen it yet. So give a minute for the answers to be collected. Okay, so it looks like we have a good group to listen to the demo today with 89% saying we haven't seen it yet, which is great. That's exactly why we are doing these trainings. So turning to the toolkit content. The bulk of the toolkit is the interactive and customizable modules that cover over 60 topic areas and issues, including finance, tax, accounting, and legal how-tos, using mandates and incentives to motivate ratepayers to deploy localized solutions, and steps to securing the long-term benefits of distributed strategies. In general, the toolkit is set up as 2 main modules, each with multiple subparts. Each of these has a reference map that gives an outline overview of the subparts within that module. These maps allow a toolkit user to see all the sections at once, and we'll be exploring these live in a few minutes. So, but first, the first main module is the What Are My Financing Options section that covers utility costs and revenue sources, debt financing localized infrastructure, and how to access state, federal, and philanthropic funding. The second main module is the section on localized water infrastructure implementation strategies, which covers ways to employ localized solutions on public property not owned by the utility and private property. The toolkit also includes success stories of communities already using localized infrastructure as real-world examples on how water managers can scale investments in these sustainable solutions to meet their drinking water, stormwater, and wastewater challenges and avoid reinventing the wheel in their service areas. In a few minutes, you'll hear from June Lopez, the general manager of one of our success stories, as Kate mentioned, Molten Eagle Water District. To provide truly practical resources, the toolkit also gives access to examples of on-site reuse and stormwater ordinances, memoranda of understanding, a bond council opinion, and a conservation easement, each with contextualizing summaries that can be easily downloaded. To help water leaders understand complex topics around building more effective distributed infrastructure program, the toolkit presents short videos on topics including how to debt finance decentralized solutions, what environmental impact bonds are and where they've been issued before, stormwater credit trading programs, and how San Antonio Water System successfully uses water conservation as a source of supply. Next, the Toolkit All Resources Library provides both a quick reference guide to the TiR Toolkit materials as well as additional resources. Last but not least, as a distinctive part of the toolkit, we've put together a team of experts to answer water leaders' questions on tax, accounting, financing, municipal bond, and other water infrastructure topics. Through the TiR Toolkit Ask an Expert portal, a short, easy-to-use online forum, decision makers can connect with these experts who stand ready to answer community-specific questions about localized water infrastructure investments free of charge. In just a bit, as Kate mentioned, you'll hear more about this feature from Ed Harrington, former GM of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, who is one of our valued expert panelists. So, how does the toolkit work? WaterNow's online interface makes accessing each of the elements of the toolkit as easy as clicking through the interactive modules, using one of the quick reference guides, or searching the All Resources Library. To give you all a better sense this morning of what this means in practice, we'll now switch to the live website view. And bear with me just one moment. So there are two ways to access the toolkit. First, if you're already perusing the Tap into Resilience website, as I am right here, you'd first go to the Start Implementing option at the top navigation menu. And from that drop-down, choose Tap into Resilience Toolkit. This takes you to an introduction to the toolkit, but since we've already covered the overview, I'll just go ahead and click on the link that's embedded here. This takes me to the main Tap into Resilience landing page. If I wanted to go here directly as the second way to find the toolkit, you can type in the easy to remember link of tapin.waternow.org/toolkit. So now that I'm on the landing page, I'm ready to get started. So I click that button and I'm taken down to the toolkit modules and the welcome. As I'm reading the welcome message, I see that this is where I can access the two main modules, the quick reference library and the Ask an Expert portal. Because the modules include a lot of information, for our purposes this morning, we'll walk through just two of the sections, which cover debt financing and private property localized infrastructure. So to access the debt financing materials, I'll scroll back up a bit and click the What are my financing options link. This takes me down the page to an overview of this main toolkit section. And since I'm interested in debt financing, I click that link. This takes me to the relevant page, debt financing section, which provides an overview of the information included, access to the expert portal, and 4 additional sublayers. So to use a hypothetical example of how a water manager might use this section of the toolkit, let's say I'm a city councilor from a town in Georgia with a population of about 50,000, whose chief financial officer has told them that accounting rules prevent their city's water efficiency rebates from being financed through its next bond issuance. As a city councilor, I am interested in increasing the amount of money my city invests in this water rebate program. So I'd like to find out whether something might have changed since my CFO formed her understanding of the accounting rules. So looking at the available topic headings, I think that answering accounting questions that arise when using debt financing seems relevant, and click on that. This brings up 2 additional sublayers. Based on the short summary and the headings, I choose how to debt finance localized infrastructure as a regulated asset. This opens an overview page, and from reading this section, I learned that there was an accounting clarification in 2018, and I now have access to a primer for water leaders on how to debt finance distributed infrastructure, an explanatory video on how to use this new accounting guidance, examples from 3 communities that are already using debt to pay for distributed solutions, additional access to the Ask an Expert feature in case I have a specific question about the materials in this section, and links to additional resources in the All Resources library. Given my hypothetical scenario, the primer is particularly interesting to me, so I'll scroll back up so I can click on that. This opens a new page where this resource lives in the resource library. And so I'll note here that all of the links within the toolkit modules are specifically designed to take you to a new page so that you can always get back to your place in the toolkit on the prior tab, which is here. But going back to the primer for now, after reading this summary overview available on the page, I'm interested in downloading this document so that I can share it with my CFO. So I click the download button and a form pops up requesting some contact information. So I will take a moment to fill out this form. And you can see that I don't know how to spell Georgia. So the benefit of filling out this form to access these materials is that if I choose a password, I will be able to access these materials again if I visit the website without filling out the information. And because I'm a city councilor, I'm going to choose that I would like to become a WaterNow member. So from there, I'll click Tap In. The information is submitted, and I'm now given access to allow the download, which is available here. So now that I have the resource that I was interested in, I can go back to my original tab and see where I was in the debt financing section of the toolkit. So based on my reading of these materials, I now have an understanding that my city can potentially use our bond proceeds to pay for our water efficiency rebates. And at the end of this section of the toolkit, I see that there's another section that covers how I might get property owners in my community to participate in my rebate program, an important part of distributed solutions. So to get to that section, I click on the Localized Water Infrastructure Implementation Strategies link, which takes me down the page to the second main module. And because I'm interested in my utility customers using water more efficiently, I click on Private Property Localized Infrastructure. As with the debt financing sections, this opens a new page with the summary and additional sublayers. And so after reading that summary and based on the headings, I think motivating private property owners to employ localized solutions is the relevant topic. So I click on that, and this brings up 2 additional options. And again, I'm interested in water efficiency rebates, so I choose the incentives option. In this sublayer, I now have access to an overview of the various types of incentives. I'm invited to join the conversation through the tap in button, which is a short pop-up form that if I filled it out, would let water know that I'd like to connect with them about tap into resilience. And there are also several links with additional resources about funding incentive programs, leveraging rates, fees, and financial incentives, state gift prohibitions, local, state, and federal taxability of financial incentives, and marketing. So in my hypothetical city councilor role, I seem to remember that one of my city attorneys told me that we can't use public dollars for private purposes. And I'm interested in evaluating whether my state gift laws allow me to debt finance water efficiency rebates. So I click on the state gift laws link. This takes me to a new window where I can now access a database of all 50 states' gift prohibitions. So quickly skimming the overview, I realize that I can look up my state constitutional sections. And since my city hypothetically is in Georgia, I'm going to choose that option from the drop-down menu. This now shows me a summary of the relevant constitutional provisions, which after reading, I learn that so long as the project serves a public purpose and the benefit is proportionate to the money spent, public dollars can be used for private purposes. So I'm also curious on how Georgia's provision compares with other states. So to do that, I click Search Another State option. And on a whim, I choose Vermont from the drop-down menu. And so from this summary, I learned that Vermont has no applicable constitutional provision. So in one other comparison analysis, I'm interested in what other southern states do. So I'll choose Kentucky. And so based on this summary, I learned that Kentucky does have a comparable rule to Georgia. So to receive a copy of all of this information, I can click the email this to me button. And because I filled out the form earlier, it preloads my email address, and I would click send this to me, and I would receive an email that looks like this with the summaries, the constitutional sections, and each of the states I compared Georgia to. And I could then use this information to discuss with my city attorney and other staff about their concerns on the use of public dollars for private improvements. So that is a very brief overview of just 2 sections of the Toolkit online modules. You can access the other 50 or so sections using the same approach. I'll note here that we view the Toolkit as a living resource that will change and grow over time based on additional materials we identify, new case studies, and feedback from Toolkit users like yourselves. To provide feedback on your experience, go back to the top navigation menu, to that Start Implementing bar, and choose the Share the Feedback option. In this section, there are 2 online forms, one that allows you to share your story with WaterNow, and another that allows you to provide feedback on your experience with the Toolkit. I really encourage everyone to participate in these opportunities, to be part of Tap Into Resilience, and to help us continue to build the Toolkit content. Okay, so before we move on, I'd like to cover one last aspect of the Toolkit over this live screen. The Toolkit modules include internal links and resources, such as the link to the state gift laws database that we looked at. But the website also has a separate library where each of these resources lives. For us today, I want to highlight how a Toolkit user could access all of the resources cited in the Toolkit modules through the library without clicking through the layers as we've just done. To do this, first go to the All Resources link at the top of the page and click. So this takes you to the landing page for the All Resources library. If you scroll down, you will find a filter navigation bar with categories to filter by all topics, all regions, and all types. So I'm interested in all of the resources included in the Toolkit modules. So under all types, I select TiR Toolkit, which calls up all of the internal resources in one place. You can also filter these Toolkit resources by region and topic. And again, since I'm interested in efficiency, I choose all regions and efficiency under topics. So these are all the water efficiency related topics and resources embedded within the Toolkit modules, but I can find them quickly here by using this filter feature. Some of them are reports, some are videos, and some are explanatory, or some are example ordinances. Okay, so that's going to cover it today on how the Toolkit works. But before I turn it over to Ed to talk about his role on the TiR expert panel, let's do another quick poll. So following the Toolkit demo that we just did, do you have a better understanding of how to use the Toolkit as a resource for your utility? True, somewhat true, neutral, somewhat false, false. So I'll give a minute to allow people to submit their answers. Okay, so it looks like the demo did pretty well and everyone is feeling a little bit better about how the Toolkit works. That's great. We really appreciate that feedback. And if you have an opportunity to provide additional feedback through the website, as I mentioned, we're very interested in hearing everyone's thoughts. So with that, I will turn it over to Ed.
Thanks, Caroline. That was really helpful. I've wandered through the Toolkit myself, but that makes me it's so much easier now that you've walked through that for me that I can figure things out that I didn't know before. So thanks very much. The part that I was going to talk about today is the expert panel. And the idea here is that no matter how much you can read through a toolkit, no matter how much you can click and get all this information, sometimes you just want to talk to a person to confirm something or to ask a question. So that's why we set up this expert panel. There's three parts I want to go through on the next slide. The first is, who are we? The next is, why might you try to use us? And the third is, how does it work? And then I'll close with an example of a call we had 2 weeks ago as this was just coming up. So the first idea is, who are we on this expert panel? We're tax people, accounting, finance, auditing, municipal bond on the next slide. Water infrastructure experts, so that we are the people who, hopefully these are the skills you would want to have some access to people to talk about. And so for the exact names of the people that are currently on the expert panel, we go to the next slide, and I'll just give you a bit of a background. So Craig Holland, Nature Conservancy, expert on green infrastructure investments. Ed Harrington, that's me, as the controller and the general manager of a water utility in San Francisco. I have some idea of infrastructure and accounting and finance kinds of things. Eric from Quantified Adventures is an expert on social impact bonds. Janet has financing green infrastructure background. American Rivers talks about water quality law and other things that Jeff's an expert in. Jim Gibbs is a financial advisor. Peter knows a lot about sustainable water and wastewater management. Roger is an attorney, tax law, clean energy investing kind of background. On the next slide, Rowan Schmidt environmental economics, experts working with FEMA and working with federal government on types of issues. Scott is an expert on bond feasibility and climate finance. And then Greenprint Partners has really jumped in with a number of their staff. Between all of them, they know a lot about stormwater solutions, green infrastructure impact investing, strategic planning, public outreach, project design, landscape design, just all over the ways of doing things. So this is our beginning group of expert panels. I'm sure that's going to grow over time, but this is who you have access to right now if you're using the toolkit. On the next slide, why might you use this panel? Well, in some cases, you're just getting started, you need some basic information, and you don't want to try to navigate your way through. You want to just ask a couple questions. So that's an absolutely appropriate way to do it. On the other hand, you may have read everything, but you still want someone to say, I'm not really sure about this. Is that really the right direction? Are there other choices? What else can I do? Or you might say, our situation is specifically different from anything I've heard or read. And so I can take bits and pieces, but when you add it all together, does that still make sense? Am I going in the right direction? What are the questions I should be asking my bond counsel or other people to get sure that I'm doing it correctly? Another thing is, can you confirm that I'm right? So in some cases, you've read all the stuff, you have planned to what you want to do, but you just want somebody else to say, yeah, that makes sense. And yes, that's probably the best bet for you to do from where you are right now. And then finally, I just want to talk to a real person. I learned from reading, but I learned from hearing, and I learned from talking to people, and it's just that much more interactive to have a conversation to say, is this really how this is supposed to work or not? So that's why you might be using our panel. And how does it work? It is pretty straightforward. As Carolyn said, there's a form that we have. You go into Tapping Resilience Toolkit, click on the Ask an Expert form. And the idea here is that if you tell us the topic that you want to have expert access to, we can try to find an expert for you. Or if you've looked at these names that are on the toolkit and you've said, oh, this expert seems to be the person that I want, which is on this slide too. You can actually tell us the name of somebody and you can say, I think this person would be great, and we can try to get a hold of them. So either way, you either know an expert or you want us to pick one, either of those things work. The idea of this is it's free, and so it's really meant to be relatively brief, typically a 30 to 60-minute phone call. We think will probably get you moving it forward, and so that's the idea. Obviously, if you need a lot more time than that, then we need to talk about whether you have bond counsel access for your own jurisdiction or what happens. So let me give you an example. We had a phone call from a major utility in Colorado 2 weeks ago, just as we were starting up the toolkit. And they wanted to do a lead service line replacement, customer side of the meter, clearly something they were not going to end up owning. And they wanted to know if they could bond fund it. So they called us, we set up a meeting. I think it only took 3 or 4 days to set the meeting up with them and their advisors. We talked about GASB 62. We talked about regulated operations and how that might work for them, but they weren't sure of their own authorizing language that allowed them to debt service certain things, whether it was local, whether it was a state. They were a charter city, they weren't sure where it was. And so we told them to go back and find out some more information, because depending on what kind of authority you have to issue debt, that may or may not allow you to go ahead and do something if you're not going to own and control the asset. Even if the accounting rules work for you, your own jurisdictional rules may not. So we gave them some ideas about what they might want to do to look for the answers to that. And then we also gave them ideas that if in fact they couldn't use a regulated operations approach, could they use other approaches that we have available to them that could keep them working towards what they want to do, but they might be able to do contracts or liens or something else to control assets. At the end of the conversation, it was only about a half hour, but they were off and running. They were obviously grateful to what we had done. And we ended it with, this isn't just your one phone call. If you have more information that you need from us, we would be happy to come back and talk to you again and help you go to the next step or the next step or the next step, because it is an iterative kind of thing. And what happens is you find out enough to get going, And then you realize as you start to work on it, oh, that's a particularly nuanced kind of thing for us. And does that still work? Or if it doesn't, are we just lost, or is there someplace else we can go to keep moving forward, but maybe using a slightly different kinds of solution than what we thought we were going to have in the first place? So that's how the toolkit works, and as part of, and how the Ask an Expert works. And as part of all of this, we'll be happy to go into more detail if you have questions about it, or I'll be happy to talk to you on a phone call one of these days. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you so much, Ed, for that. So now we'll be hearing from June Lopez, the General Manager over at Moulton Niguel Water District.
Thank you so much. This is June Lopez, and I'm really happy to join this webinar. I want to thank Water Now Alliance for creating this toolkit, especially right now with what's happening throughout the state. I think it's extremely the timing is great with Governor's California Water Resilience Plan that's currently being developed. So I thank you for your leadership in making sure that this financing option is available through GASB 62. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Moulton Niguel. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we serve 6 cities in South Orange County. We have a combination of coastal and inland cities. We have a population of about 170,000 people. We have 7 board members who are publicly elected and 160 employees. We provide water, wastewater, and water recycling to all of our customers in our service area. In South Orange County, most of our water supply is imported. So in our service area, we're 100% reliant on imported water from Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Over the years, out of necessity, we've gotten very good with conservation, water use efficiency, and water recycling, to where today about 25% of our overall water demand is met with recycled water. And because of our need, we've done a lot of efforts over the years in conservation water efficiency. And this notion of distributed infrastructure is incredibly important, especially given the challenge that we have today. We have water supply concerns. We also have infrastructure concerns, all these things that require tremendous amount of funds. And really all of us are struggling to figure out, how do we finance these very expensive types of efforts in order to maintain safe, reliable drinking water for our community. And this is where I feel that Water Now Alliance has been such a valuable partner. Over the years, they've helped us come up with ideas. They provided technical assistance. We've had the pleasure of being selected as their Project Accelerator program to try new programs with our community, particularly focusing on outdoor landscaping, and also helping our electeds understand what are some of the issues that we need to think through, and what are some of the options that are available. So I say all this because if you're not as familiar with Water Now Alliance or the Toolkit, it's a very powerful resource, and I encourage you all to try it if you haven't already, because really their approach, and I think the approach as an industry going forward, is about looking at all the different options that we have before us. And some of you have heard it's sort of the all of the above approach in stretching our water supply for reliability. We've all understand that our specific areas are unique. We have different challenges and different solutions. So having this toolkit approach has really been helpful, because it allows you to pick and choose based on the needs and the wants that you have. And where you feel that you need support, whether it's financial or technical, this is a prime example of a place you can go and learn more about what you have. So when you look at the cost of the centralized infrastructure, these are the treatment plants, some of the things that's already been talked about in the webinar, those are things that we still continue to do. That's what we do as a business. However, what are some of the innovative strategic ways to mitigate those costs? So when you look at the supply cost of new water supplies, those tend to be more expensive than existing supplies. When you talk about major treatment plants, those tend to be more expensive than some of these distributed infrastructure solutions. So over the years, Moulton Niguel, we've really seen the benefits of that approach. And particularly given during the historic drought in California, we saw that our efforts in demand management has been valuable in terms of meeting our state mandate, which was 20% reduction. And by the way, because we've done so much over the years with conservation, we weren't sure if we're going to hit that mark. But this is where we really learned and opened our eyes to all the different strategies and innovation that exist out there, and became believers in demand management as a very important strategy in our water resource management. So we were able to meet our target. In the course of that time, we were also able to finance a lot of these programs with support from our regional wholesaler, which is Metropolitan Water District. But we also adopted back in late 2000 a water budget-based rate structure. So if you're not familiar with that, it's a tiered structure that really incentivizes efficient use. So if you're efficient with your water use, given the indoor and outdoor customized demands that you have, then you pay a lower rate. Once you go into inefficient use for both of those categories, you pay a higher rate. And the higher rates, those are collected and earmarked to fund programs for water efficiency. And the idea behind that is cost of those programs to stretch the current supply you have is much more cost effective than having to go out and look for new supplies. Although that is something that you have to do, again, trying to be as cost effective as possible. So over the years, we've gone through iteration of this rate structure, and now we're at a place where we've seen tremendous amount of benefit because it is an alternative way to finance some of these customized projects. So it is part of our rate structure, but it is structured to be dedicated solely for these types of programs. And so with that, we've developed programs. As an example, we have a program called Naturescape that really takes the customer from A to Z, because a lot of times what we've learned from surveys and interaction is what keeps people from participating in these programs is just, it can be onerous, it can take a long time, and so they tend not to participate. So we've learned to streamline and really handhold our customers from beginning to end to make it easy for them. And we've seen the benefits of that already in a short amount of time. We also did similar sort of a mindset on smart timers. We know that outdoor water usage is the greatest usage and where we see the greatest amount of waste in water usage. So we've been focusing on in the last handful of years on this outdoor transformation. And while smart timer rebates have been available, the idea of having to install, again, it becomes an ease question. And so we've done a direct install smart timer program, and we've done that now a little over a year. So we have some stats that show that that is very cost effective, and the avoided cost is something that we can quantify. We've also done bilingual training for professional landscapers because we do realize that many properties are not actually kept and managed by the homeowner. So we've done a bilingual program to really equip these professionals with knowledge and the tools to be able to manage these properties in the most efficient way. And last but not least is a CalScape nursery program that we worked with Water Now Alliance. They helped us to jumpstart that through their Project Accelerator program to really work with all the nurseries and local agencies, and this is growing, by the way, to really help the public understand the different offerings and the palettes when you talk about California friendly plants, native plants, that there are all these different options, and really grow that education and awareness. And so these are all programs that we funded outside of the conventional rates, because again, within our rate structure is this earmark component. But as we see these programs succeed, we always are saying, well, how can we do more? And how can other agencies who don't have these rate structure do the similar thing? Because while we all enjoy the regional rebates that are out there, and sometimes rebates that we get as part of state or federal grants, it's always much more sustainable and stable to have the funding source identified and knowing how long that will actually fund a program or a strategy. So having this ability through GASB 62 is, I think, a big game changer, because it allows you to pay for these things over time, because with rates, and even with our rate structure, you have it's sort of pay as you go, and you have the existing customer base paying for all these things that will have multi-year benefit. The notion of issuing bond and now being able to use for these distributed infrastructure now gives you the ability to pay it over time, and also to be able to explain to your ratepayers a term that I learned through my staff, which is the generational equity, is that those who benefit pay. So if you have your existing customers pay for everything now to set up these programs or projects, then those who come thereafter, who's not necessarily the initial investors, are reaping the benefits. So this allows that benefit and cost to be spread, which is really great. And also, there's a lot of consternation when you're talking about Prop 218 process, and that's just speaking very frankly. Over the years, I think even for electeds and staff, there in some communities with different resources and conditions, there's a lot of concerns about that. And while it's important to make sure that your rates do have incremental increase, I think just for financial sustainability, having this option allows us to fund some significant dollar items without having to go through what could be a very challenging Prop 218 process. And I think the other part that's really great about the distributed infrastructure approach is that it requires and succeeds with participation. When you go build these major treatment plants or you go identify supplies, the public sort of knows what you're doing, but a lot of these things happen behind the scenes, and the public's not as engaged unless you have a public hearing or things of that nature. But when you get into these types of water efficiency, demand management, you can't have its success without the involvement and the engagement of the customers. And we have so many examples of that, but I don't want to drone on here. But that is the other benefit of this approach that the toolkit offers, is that through engagement and awareness, you develop a relationship that allows you to get support for whatever you're doing as an agency from the public, because it really does require you to go out into the community and to talk to them about how their actions impact the water supplies, how their habits and efficiency can actually help them save water. And that kind of dialogue is incredibly meaningful. And that's one of the things that we've seen, is that even once after the emergency drought regulations were lifted, we've not seen a rebound. We've actually had our relationship with our customers enhanced because, again, outreach is an incredibly important component of these types of strategies. So there's these multi-benefits just outside of having reliable supply, a cost-effective approach, financing options. But this is a really great avenue to develop and cultivate and strengthen the relationships that we have with our customers. So those are just some of our experience. And again, this toolkit is, and just even sitting through this webinar, some of the features that I wasn't even aware of. And I think expert panel is, that's awesome, because to be able to talk to someone and to get that dialogue going, and it's available for free, I cannot think of a reason why you would not use that as a valuable resource. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, June. And I do just want to mention for everyone that the rate structure June was just mentioning is actually on the toolkit. So you can also check it out there, or just reach out to us for more information. And just thanks again to both Ed Harrington and June for joining us today. And of course, thank you for all of you joining us on the webcast as well. And you will see the webcast link on the screen here. So you can do the tapin.waternow.org. Just to get to our main page. And then, as Caroline had mentioned, that / will get you to the toolkit. And if you want to learn more, please join us and just tap in today. And if you, of course, have a localized infrastructure story of what you've been working on in your own community, please share it with us through that Share Your Story that Caroline also mentioned. So Water Now Alliance will be hosting a bunch of webcasts like this one today that will be conducting further deep dives into the toolkit. on a variety of different topics. So you can get a bigger sense of what is all in this toolkit. So keep your eyes out for those invites. We will be sending them out. And in addition, for those of you listening in from California, I hope you'll come and join us for the 4th Annual California Water Data Summit, which will be this August 22nd through the 23rd at UC Davis. And our own Caroline Cook will be presenting on the TiR Toolkit in a panel focused in on data for water use efficiency. And while we're on this topic of events, we are excited to be hosting WaterNow's 5th Annual Summit this April 15th and 16th, 2020 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It'll be at the Water Center at UPenn. So we're very excited, and keep your eyes out for that as well. And again, just thanks so much. We'd like to invite you to learn more about our work, solutions, and just become a WaterNow member. So be sure to check out waternow.org as well. It is easy and free to join. And with that, I'll be handing it over to Tim Grant for our Q&A session.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin the Q&A, you'll find that I've included a survey link in everyone's chat box, which is located here. After the webcast, we'd really appreciate it if you just take a few minutes to provide your comments and opinions on the webcast, as well as offer some suggestions for information you'd like to see covered in our upcoming TiR webcasts. So we're going to just give everybody a few seconds to ask maybe some questions on the Q&A. But we can start with this question, and this is really a general one for all parties involved. And so the question is, how do I share my own community's water story or become a case study?
So I can field that one at first, and if anyone wants to chime in, feel free. We've mentioned a couple times the toolkit is really aimed at being an iterative living document. So I encourage everyone to go to that Start Implementing page on tapin.waternow.org to fill out one of the online forms, to share the story option, which is how you connect with me, Caroline, to become a Tap into Resilience case study. And if you'd like to see some additional material in the toolkit that you have a question that isn't quite answered there, but may not be prompting you to reach out to Ed yet on the expert panel, you can share that type of information and feedback through the more generalized feedback form, and that will also come to me, and I'll likely reach out to you to understand your question, and that will help inform a new iteration of the toolkit.
Great, thank you. We also had a question that was directed at June. June, during your conversation, someone said, someone asked, have you found charging higher fees for increased water use to fund conservation programs has had the unintended consequence of creating a negative view of conservation? What are your thoughts on that?
Not at all. Our feedback has been very positive from our customers because it gives them the choice. So if you want to use water efficiently, you'll be incentivized. If you want to use water inefficiently, then you're just willing to pay more. So it puts the choice in the customer's hands. And I think with the historic drought, everyone understands the importance of efficiency because everyone understands our weather is changing and these conditions, the dry conditions, will always come in cycles. And so this is a way that we have to live going forward. And we've been able to provide information to show that their investment, right, because everything is with their money, their investment in these conservation programs are at a lower cost than if we were to take money to build new supplies. And again, I'm just speaking from our service area, because again, in some areas you do need new supplies. So when they see that, it's sort of the smart investment, a thought out investment of their dollars, it makes them a fan and it makes them feel empowered to do their part, because if they're efficient, then that means we spend less money having to secure reliable supply of water. And so the actual response we've gotten from customers, what else can we do? What more can we do? And it's helped us not only to launch, but expedite our advanced meter infrastructure program, because we've gotten such positive, strong response about wanting to do their part. So our experience actually has been a very good one.
Wonderful. Thank you, June. We also have a question regarding the Ask an Expert feature. Will this only be available to members?
This is Caroline again. I can answer that one. The Ask an Expert feature is available to anyone that is using the TiR toolkit. So we do have some WaterNow member exclusive material on our WaterNow website and some in the All Resources library. But in order to provide the service to a wide range of water leaders, it is available to all toolkit users.
Great. We also have another question specifically regarding the content, and that is there a time frame for modules that are coming soon, such as maybe something like stormwater credit trading programs?
I'm happy to report that the stormwater credit trading program is now live. You can watch a video with one of our other expert panelists, Jeff Odefee from American Rivers, explain the stormwater credit trading program that they've worked on. There's also information on DC Department of Energy and Environment stormwater credit trading program and how they've chosen to implement in their city.
Okay, great. Well, with that, we're out of time. So we want to thank everyone, our panelists especially, and all the attendees for attending the webcast. We hope you all have a lovely day. Feel free to email us if you have any further questions, but thank you.